Before we go further to the video, I just want to say today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp, in case you didn't know, is one of the best places online that you go to if you need a counselor or just someone to talk to. BetterHelp offers affordable online counseling. You can get access to licensed, trained, and experienced trained psychologists, marriage and family therapists, clinical social workers, and board licensed professional counselors, so there won't be any shortage of people who can help you and talk to you about anything you're struggling with. And all you got to do is go to BetterHelp by using the link in the description box, then answer a few questions, then they match you with the counselor based on those questions, and then you're all set. Plus, if you ended up being paired with a counselor that you don't like, you can always switch to another one who suits you best. So yeah, if you decide to check out BetterHelp, make sure to use the link in the description box or the comment section down below, as it supports the channel. And by the way, I am in convalescence, and with that being said, let's jump right in the video. Tiamat, the Anunakki goddess, also known as Eve. I will put the link in the video description, as well as the author of this good article or blog. There is an ancient alien goddess named Tiamat, whom the various authors of the Bible have renamed Eve. It is she that has been blamed unjustly for the fall between commas of mankind, when in actuality she should be blessed, because without her we would not be here. The sole purpose for her being was to become fertile and bring forth the family of man. My research on the terraformers, known as the Anunakki, unravels the notion of original sin, because I propose that it was and is still a part of a great conspiracy by both. The music is too loud. By both the patriarchs of old to suppress the goddess every time she rose to power, and a more modern patriarchal crusade that occurred starting around 10,000 BC. More about this later. The heart of my work, entitled Ancient Alien Goddess, centers around the goddess Ninmah, aka Ninhursag, whom I propose is the creatrix goddess that genetically engineered us, between commas, by combining their own extraterrestrial genetic material, or their essences, between commas, as the text referred to it, with the genetic material from Homo erectus, ancestor of modern Neanderthal, to create the first successful prototype male and female human beings, who were named Adam and Eve in the Bible. The ancient texts refer to them, as I will continue to do so, as Danu and Tiamat. Ninmah is the unsung heroine, who is the Anunakki goddess that I believe belongs at the top of the Trinity, consisting of Enki and his son Ningishida, who along with their half-sister Ninmah, not only masterminded our genetic engineering, but actually did the hands-on, between commas, medical work using genetic material from her half-brother Enki, Homo erectus, Ninmah herself, Enki's wife Damkina, and Enki's son by Damkina, Ningishzida. Ninmah carried the zygote she genetically engineered in her own womb, whom, as I mentioned, would be named Adam. This is of great importance because she would, as suggested, whilst he was growing in utero in her womb, be downloaded sacred messages straight into his fetal tissue from Ninmah's own life experiences, just as each of us receive in utero from our own mothers between parentheses. I believe Ninmah was able to download much of her past, present, and possibly even future wisdom when viewed time not in a linear way. She would be capable, I believe, to also download all of her own belief systems and training in life sciences directly into Adamu's subconscious mind, whilst she carried him. This would most likely include memories of her own planet, Nibiru, and its history, her own family tree consisting of her father, the then king named Anu, and all of her family that remembered and honored the peaceful times of equality. An epigenetic memory of Nibiru's former egalitarian society before the nuclear wars between parentheses, and also from the current reigning patriarchal society ruled by her father Anu. The very patriarchy that was imposed upon the goddesses of Nibiru because of the recent damage to their planet's atmosphere and ozone layer that occurred when their nuclear wars took place. The text tells us that 6,500 warring nations from Nibiru's north and south used nuclear weapons to ostensibly nuke each other as a means to resolve their petty territorial disputes instead of egalitarian peaceful negotiations. This short-sighted stupidity nearly wiped out the male population and also damaged the male sperm, along with their volcanoes' ability to spew ash into their atmosphere to help retain warmth as their planet traveled such long distances from the twin star system it orbited. It is said that they have a twin sun to our own, and that Nibiru orbits through both sun's solar system. Anu, the reigning king of Nibiru, following the folly of their nuclear wars, ordered that the surviving men marry, if they were not already married, their half-sisters, and make them their primary wives. Their first son would be their heir, but also he demanded that they also take secondary wives and have plenty of concubines too, as they were virtually being asked to repopulate Nibiru. Emphasis was placed on having sons, which is pure patriarchy, and one can feel some of the woman's ire of having to be demoted behind their brothers. I suspect that in the past egalitarian society of Nibiru, talent and merit were placed in front of gender. These surviving women were turned into variable breeding machines, incubators between parentheses, for the Nibiran man, who later on Earth became known as Anunakki, but we will refer to them whilst they are on Nibiru as Niberans. Many of these bird goddess women were admired to the point of worship and perhaps also thought to be fertility goddesses. We can imagine the riches and rewards they received, but we can also only imagine the toll that constantly breeding like this would have on them. The question of the state of their sperm here is also fascinating because it is my contention that the woman of Nibiru could reproduce quite easily parthenogenetically, which means without the need for sperm or sexual intercourse at all. I have found in my research that the Nibiran woman had a recessive XY allele, whereas Earth women, for the most part, have XX. Komodo dragons have been said to give birth to males when the need arises without the help of a male. Our famous virgin birth story, of course, is Mother Mary, but Buddha was said to have come into the world parthenogenetically as well. Women are capable of far more than we know. Isn't it time that all limits were removed from us? First, we have to remove them ourselves and set ourselves free from the infinite potential the multiverse offers. Everything that can hold us back or set us free lies within us in both conscious and subconscious belief systems. More on that in another chapter. Ninmah compassionately carried in her own womb the zygote she genetically engineered in copper clay vessels, which she blended with the genetics of an Erectus woman, whom Enki found to be especially compassionate because when Enki set up traps to ensnare various animals so he could study them, the ape woman would release them from their traps. He found the perfect donors for Erectus essence, which would be mixed with Enki's, who was her half-brother, and also the essence from his son, Nigishzida, whose mother was Damkina. Nigishzida did the implantation himself. You can imagine how proud his teacher, Dr. Ninmah, must have been of a protege. We can also imagine the Akashic record and education this fetal tissue gestating in Ninmah's womb received prior to birth because of Ninmah's vast knowledge as well as her caring and compassionate nature. This first successful birth of the hybrid being, Danu, blended and merged heaven, Nibiru, and Mother Earth, is one sentient being, and this was a crowning achievement for Ninmah and her cohorts. How comfortable are we now in proclaiming that this genius, the goddess Ninmah, created man in her image? I am very comfortable with this knowledge, as it makes perfect sense. She is the only one of these three casts of characters who is the expert in life sciences. Enki was expert and educated in architecture, physics, and engineering, whilst his half-brother, the domineering Earth commander Enlil, who usurped Enki's birthright just by being born from the loins of Anu's primary wife, Antu, had been trained exclusively in military matters. Enlil didn't care about life on Earth. He cared about conquering and controlling it and taking as much from it as he wanted. Nigish Zida was being trained to assist both he and Ninmah. It is quite clear to me and makes sense that Enki and his son, the Father, the Son, and Ninmah, the Holy Spirit, between parentheses, are the true Holy Trinity responsible for jump-starting, through genetic engineering, the beings they call ape man and ape woman between commas into our human race. A race created to work for the gods and goddesses who were assigned to live on planet Earth primarily to mine gold and do any work the Anunakki didn't wish to do themselves. But they were also sent here to get out of Anu's way so that he and his rule could not be usurped by any of them and their future offspring. However, we, it seems from the text, were created as a worker race. I believe that the word worship was hijacked because it morphed out of the very action that we were created to do day in, day out for them, which amounts to worship. We, the 99%, are still worshipping these very same bloodlines who remain in control through a specific bloodline passed down from the patriarchal Anunnaki. But keep in mind there is still a bloodline based on caring and compassion through Enki and Ninmah that is still here, I believe, in our empty DNA. Remember, men inherit it too, but simply cannot pass it, but they can feel it in their feminine side or caring, compassionate yin side. And once the men and women who compromise the majority of the 99% wake up wake up to it and experience or envision what real equality is all about for all genders, races, creeds, and colors, we will see the paradigm shift to an egalitarian society. When this takes place, perhaps even full disclosure can take place as at long last, when it is safe for these beings to appear again. Remember, they have a point of view as well, and I am certain that the idea of space-based weaponry terrifies them, for the ramifications to the cosmos are way beyond our knowledge. The Anunnaki know all too well what nuclear and advanced weapons can do to the fabric of time and space, and more often than not, just as we are doing today, proceeded to orchestrate big doings that would have a devastating and lasting effect. The sophistication of the genetic engineering program done under the directorship of Ninmah, the chief medical officer, who had brought with her from Nibiru 50 female medical assistants, some of whom would later be recruited voluntarily as bird goddesses to further assist Ninmah in the creation of the workforce and all of Ninmah's work at her laboratory in Africa, which included wine and beer making and a whole pharmacopoeia of healing plants, flowers, and herbs. Ninmah would indeed give birth to the first, let's just say first successful prototype between parentheses, male Homo sapiens sapien baby, and in the text as interpreted by various noted ancient alien theorists we find these words, quote, to a male child Ninmah birth was giving. Enki the boy child held in his hands the image of perfection was he. He slapped the newborn in his hind parts. The newborn uttered proper sounds. He handed the newborn to Ninmah, and she proudly held it up and said, my hands have made it. Victoriously she shouted. Z.S. Wars 138 to 139. Adamu was born with a beautiful mahogany reddish brown between parenthesis skin tone and black hair. But Adamu also had a surprise for everyone in attendance at this glorious birth. He sported foreskin, which the Nibiran men did not have. We can now surmise where the tradition of circumcision came from. Men would decide it would be better to emulate how the Anunakki gods looked rather than have their penis look like Erectus' private parts. This is why we see this tradition in the Abrahamic faiths that all came out of the Sumerian writings before they ever saw the light of day in other translations. I'm going to make a quick comment here. I'm not for circumcision because it hurts very badly the child. Okay, I'm just only reading what it is said, and it makes sense. This is where it's coming from, but that doesn't mean that we have to continue this practice, especially not if you're not from the Middle East. We'll continue to read. Adamu, once fully grown, would stand high and say the navel of the very tall Anunakki, who were referred to as giants of Nephilim between commas in the Bible, as they stood, some say, between 8 to 12 feet tall. We all remember the Goliath story, right? Perhaps he was a direct descendant of an Anunakki god and goddess. We have honored those who commit violent acts, such as David, who beheaded Goliath, all in the name of a god. It was deemed okay to commit murder, adultery, and steal if the god ordered it. What a contradiction we have been forced to live with. All this genetic engineering that Ninmah was doing led us to wonder how the first female would come into being, and that again would be at the direction of Ninmah. Can you see how she not only joined genes together, but she also enjoined her own genius between commas and them? Ningishzida was instructed to implant another zygote, which had been prepared by Ninmah, using Adamu's essence for a zygote, which was put into Enki's wife, Damkina, the daughter of Alalu, by one of his concubines between parentheses, and then, when it grew to a viable hybrid female fetus, Ninmah again delivered the baby girl from Damkina's womb via C-section. C-section babies, not only not being born vaginally, do not receive the healthy microbiome that a vaginal birth provides babies both then and now. But Damnika would breastfeed the baby and nurture her just as Ninmah did with Adamu. I also contend that the act of breastfeeding conveys far more than mere nourishment, but also direct heart-to-heart communication and further downloads of vital information. But it also creates a bond between mother and child that lasts forever. Ninmah would educate both Adamu and Tiamat and all the life forms she was part of engineering, as they all would live with her in a beautiful abode in Africa, and yes, that would even include their failures. But they engineered something that had life. Essence, she did not euthanize it. She nurtured them all, and they were well cared for and loved at her beautiful compound. Ninmah named the newborn hybrid baby girl Tiamat, mother of life, between parentheses. Tiamat is also the same name of the big watery planet that was hit by one of Nibiru's moons, evil wind between parentheses, and there were actually 2 impacts to the planet Tiamat on successive orbits of Nibiru. These impacts, it is said, helped to seed Earth, the former Tiamat, which suffered a huge gouge in her side. Between commas, with life forms from the planet Sitchin refers to as the 12th planet of Nibiru. Nibiru is 8 to 10 times larger than Earth. Tiamat was said to be born a fair-skinned blonde, blue-eyed infant, just like the Nibiran girls were said to look like. Tellinger, Safe Species, page 452. There may have been a little more diversity in the men from Nibiru, but the texts are not specific about this. Keep in mind the limited access that Nibiru had to both their sons' rays would have caused their skin to thin and whiten in order to allow for more vitamin D and folic acid to penetrate their dermis, whilst our African ancestors had thicker, darker skin to protect from too much vitamin D. Whilst the human race skin thin as we migrated over thousands of years to colder, more northern climates. We can assume that men and women from Nibiru and other planets that could support life somewhat as we know it always had a wide range of skin, hair, and eye coloring, including the anomaly of red hair, green eyes, black hair, and blue eyes due to some genetic variations from various other terraformers colonizing our solar system and from mutations as well. Tiamat would have inherited Enki's wife Damkina's anti-DNA. She was the former King Alalu's daughter between parentheses, but most likely Tiamat would not have inherited the special recessive XY allele that Nibiran woman had, which I mentioned earlier, but I will share more about this and parthenogenesis, virgin birth between parentheses, in a future chapter of Ancient Alien Goddesses. However, Tiamat, I believe, would have received, just as Adamu had, all the knowledge of the Akashic record that Damkina would share, as well as Ninmah, who was constantly present and doting over all of her birth mothers. And I propose they both could very well download this information, just like all other mothers do to this very day to Tiamat and Adamu between commas in utero. But Tiamat would also have downloaded all that which was going on around Damkina in her home, the gardens and lab, where she was a tiny zygote had been surgically implanted into Dakina's womb. Damkina also had to contend with the fact that her husband Enki, whom she was married of for political reasons by his father Anu, was also in love with Ninmah, his former fiancée, also his half-sister by one of his father's 6 secondary wives, between parentheses. To make matters worse, Enlil, her half-brother between commas, was said to be in love with her too. Enki especially knew that a male heir born from Ninmah would usurp Enlil's line, but Ninmah and Enki bore daughters. Some say that both Ninmah and Enlil had the same mother, but I disagree because they had had a brief affair on Nibiru when Ninmah was so distraught following Enki's and Ninmah's broken betrothal by the father King Anu. This liaison resulted in the birth of a son who would be known as Ninurta. I contend that Enlil raped her, as we would see him later to one Ninmah's medical goddesses, whose name was Sod. Anu would not take his daughter Ninmah's alliance with Enlil lightly, as he is said to have forbade Ninmah to ever marry as a result of this violation of his trust. But the lives of Anu's 3 children by different mothers would set us all on the course that affects us to this very day, and it is full of intrigue. There is much we can read between the lines and surmise. It's time to weave her story, between commas, into what we call history, between commas, so that we can last have our story, between commas. It was of critical importance since Ninmah and Enki have been deprived of marriage. I believe for them to make this new hybrid couple, Danu and Tiamat, fertile so they could become Enki and Ninmah's start to their own very special family, the family that were not allowed to have due to the cancellation of the betrothal. But these star-crossed lovers would give man and woman the ability to reproduce themselves naturally and create for them a kind of extended family. To cause that to happen, Ninmah, who was trained Nigishida in medicine, had him anesthetize herself along with Enki, Adamu, and Tiamat to perform a little DNA extraction surgery. So, from the rib of Enki, the life essence he extracted into the rib of Adamu, the life essence he inserted. From the rib of Ninmah, the life essence he extracted into the rib of Tiamat, the life essence he inserted. End of the quote. This does sound a lot like the Adam and Eve story from the book Between Commas, doesn't it? But we can see how he got Enki's paternal or nuclear DNA and Ninmah's mitochondrial DNA, which I contend is of critical importance today in allowing for the activation of this beautiful genetic connection to ancient Indian goddesses' ancestors, who I believe hold the keys to not only the long life genetic, but the peace genetic as well. Now we know, or at least get a sense, that a god did not do this. The goddess Ninmah genetically master planned it, and Ninmah executed this plan with help from her beloved half-brother. and sometimes lover Enki and his son Nigishzida, the father, the son, and the holy goddess Ninmah. Let us not forget that Enki and Nigishzidix, I think she wanted to write Nigishzida, okay? Let's not forget that Enki and Nigishzida had no ability or training to do this. Medicine and healing woman's work, and Ninmah was the chief medical officer both on Nibiru and planet Earth. Nigishzida, along with her 50 female medical assistants, which Ninmah brought with her from Nibiru, along with the genetic material for wine, beer, and the recipe of how to make it, domestic animal and agricultural plants for both our heating and feeding the animals, medical plants and flowers for both beauty, their oils, and their healing potential between parentheses, and she had a huge contingent that was taking their orders and training from Ninmah. Think of Ninmah like the chief of staff in a major hospital today, only she also designed all the procedures and the medicines from the materials she brought with her. Tiamat made leaf aprons for herself and Danu because they were both now self-conscious, between commas, for the first time. They no longer had just their subconscious mind that they had been born with, which operated much like that our animal kin. They now had the ability to be self-aware and not just react with their automatic nervous system driving them and triggering the hormones that cause the fight or flight or rest and repose response. But now they would really start to be like the Anunakki trinity that engineered them, or as we have said, made them in their image. They would also be influenced by the other Anunnaki that they interacted with whilst being raised by Ninmah, Damkina, and the other goddesses. But it is true that they would be expelled from the beauty of Eden by the hateful and vengeful Enlil. To use the word creation in this or any other Genesis story is not really accurate, because nothing can really be created nor destroyed, as Einstein tells us. It can only be transformed into some other form of energy. The transmutation of Adamu and Tiamat from clones to reproductive conscious beings was done with the expertise of Ninmah, who trained Nigishzidas to, under anesthesia, make Tiamat and Adamu full conscious and reproductively fertile. This would be the turning point, because after the next set of clones, 7 boys and 7 girls born from Ninmah's medical assistants, both goddesses, were sent to work the mines to work, all the future workers who would be born on Earth would have reproduction abilities of their own. This occurred because Ninmah refused to let her birth goddesses do this again. The C-sections took too much out of them. We see again the compassion demonstrated by Ninmah when the others wished to see this experiment repeated again. When Tiamat then became pregnant by the awakening of Adamu and Tiamat's new consciousness, this became the beginning of our human race. Tiamat's pregnancy is only the beginning of our story, as we will continue to see when I have more installments of ancient alien goddesses to share with you. A special thanks to the website Anunakki Speaks, Zechariah Sitchin, Michael Telling, and many more ancient alien theorists who have all helped me to bring the important information regarding the ancient alien goddesses to the world. Visit the Facebook page for Ancient Alien Goddesses soon. So I will put the link in the video. I really need to eat. I will put the link in the video description as well as the writer of this blog. Thank you for listening.